Hi, welcome back. Okay, so for part two, we're going to be talking about the common causes of digestive symptoms and IBS. So, just a quick reminder here that all information written and presented in this free training is for educational and informational purposes only, and it is not medical advice. Okay, so before we get to the 5 pillars of healing your gut, we have to address common root causes of digestive issues and IBS. So this isn't an all-inclusive list, but it is some of the most common root causes that I see in my practice and what I'll be talking to you about today. So it's important to note that with conventional medicine, the belief is that there is no cure for IBS, right? And that's because IBS is a catch-all diagnosis, meaning that there isn't an underlying disease state or diagnosable disease that they were able to identify in a medical workup. So not really sure what may be going on. Therefore, you have irritable bowel syndrome or IBS. But in functional medicine, we see IBS as a symptom of an underlying issue. And that issue could be poor digestion, leaky gut, dysbiosis, or SIBO. So I'll be breaking down each of these for you today. Okay, number 1, poor digestion. So the saying goes, you are what you eat, but it should really be, you are what you eat, digest, and absorb, right? And when we're not properly digesting our food, it can lead to a whole host of symptoms. Things like belching and bloating quickly after eating, feeling full right away. So you take a couple bites and you're already feels like that food is just sitting in your stomach. Having undigested food in your stool, having diarrhea or constipation, and stools that float or look greasy are all signs of poor digestion. And pay attention here to these symptoms because really we can start to make some connections with your potential root cause and how you're experiencing your symptoms. So what are some causes of poor digestion? Frequently, it can be due to low stomach acid. We need stomach acid to trigger the release of digestive juices and enzymes. So not having enough stomach acid can be really detrimental to digestion. Do we have poor bile flow? Bile is absolutely necessary for the digestion and absorption of fats. Do we have enough enzymes? Enzymes help us break down and absorb protein, fat, and carbohydrates. So those in inefficient levels can absolutely impact digestion. How are our eating habits? Are we grazing and rushed when we're eating? And do we barely chew our food? Medications like proton pump inhibitors, PPIs can lead to low stomach acid. Stress, poor motility, and poor hydration and mineral status all impact our ability to properly digest food. So, what can we do to help support our digestion? So you can start taking some notes here of things that you think you want to start focusing on. Number 1 is we want to focus on how to eat, right? Oftentimes we focus on what to eat that we totally forget about how we're eating. And that's actually just as, if not more important. We want to make sure that we're chewing until applesauce consistency, taking 5 deep breaths before meals, or doing a couple rounds of box breathing, which is when you breathe in for 4 counts, you hold your breath for 4 counts, you exhale for 4 counts, and you repeat that a couple times. One of my favorite breathing exercises. And that helps us to shift from a sympathetic or fight or flight state into the parasympathetic or the rest and digest state, which is actually what we need to be in to help to optimize digestion. Can we slow down and really focus on our food when we're eating? Another really important one is eating balanced meals that have protein, fat, carb, and fiber, right, at each eating opportunity or each meal. Can we limit grazing? When we're grazing all day, that turns off a really important function called the migrating motor complex, which is like the cleanup crew of your gut. So if that's not going on, you can get buildup and particles and food particles and bacteria kind of stay stagnant in your gut. We need that cleanup crew to come and swoosh it through, and that happens during periods of fasting. So we want 3 to 4 hours in between meals. Can we optimize our hydration? A good place to start here is half your body weight in ounces. So if you weigh 150 pounds, your goal to start would be 75 ounces of water. Things like digestive bitters in tincture form or even in a spray form, or apple cider vinegar diluted in water before taking that before meals can help to optimize digestion by boosting acidity in the stomach and boosting secretion of digestive juices. Can we focus on stress management, daily stress management? Remember, we want to be in that parasympathetic state often to optimize digestion. And of course, with things like advanced testing, we can know what targeted supplements do you need to help support your digestion. Okay, number 2, leaky gut. So you've probably heard of this one before, but leaky gut occurs when that gut lining becomes inflamed and leaky. So a healthy gut lining only allows properly digested fats, proteins, and starches to pass into the bloodstream. However, when that barrier becomes leaky, things like food particles and waste products and bacteria can actually cross through the gut barrier into the bloodstream. And when these things get into the bloodstream, your immune system is triggered, right? They're not really supposed to be there. So they start fighting them. And that immune activation is what can cause symptoms outside of your gut, like joint and skin issues. So people with leaky gut tend to be more sensitive to a wide variety of foods. And that's not because of the food itself, but the environment that the food is going into. So here it's important to not just focus on eliminating these trigger foods, but addressing the leaky gut and making sure that the gut barrier becomes strong and that it's not leaky anymore, because the leaky gut is what is causing those food sensitivities in a lot of cases. So causes of leaky gut can be dysbiosis, which is an imbalance of gut bacteria. We'll get to that next. Things like chronic stress and environmental exposures, medications like Advil, excessive alcohol intake, poor diet, nutrient deficiencies, and inflammation can all cause that gut barrier to become leaky. So another important thing here is we want to address why the gut is leaky in the first place for long-term symptom relief, not only focus on addressing that leaky gut, but again, addressing these causes that I just talked about. And the symptoms of leaky gut are, classic gut symptoms: bloating, gas, constipation, diarrhea, but we can also see things outside of the gut: joint pain, brain fog, fatigue, skin issues, and multiple food sensitivities. All right, so how can we heal that gut lining, right? Number 1 is we want to balance gut bacteria and clear any infections that may be present. We'll talk about that in a little bit. We want to work on daily stress management and balancing blood sugar. Stress and imbalanced blood sugar both can cause elevated cortisol levels, which can cause leaky gut, so we have to get those in a good place. We want to focus on nourishing and anti-inflammatory foods. So this might look like bright colored fruits and vegetables that are really rich in fiber and polyphenols, including things like ginger and turmeric, high quality proteins, nutrient dense whole food carbohydrates, and anti-inflammatory fats. And things like collagen and bone broth are really nourishing for that gut lining. We want to support good bacteria with pro and prebiotics. So probiotics provide the bacteria themselves, while prebiotics help for that bacteria to flourish. So it's actually important that we work on both of those things. And this can be through food as well as supplementation. We want to remove gut irritants when necessary. So things like alcohol, very hyper-processed foods, and irritating foods for that individual. We want to make sure that we're eating enough. Healing is an energy-dependent process, so we need to be eating enough in order to heal. We want to focus on how to eat, like I mentioned earlier. And of course, we can also then add in some targeted supplementation based on testing. Things like colostrum and curcumin, aloe vera, and slippery elm are wonderful tools to help soothe and heal that gut lining. Okay, dysbiosis. So what is dysbiosis? Dysbiosis occurs when there's an imbalance of gut bacteria, parasites, or fungi present. So there are 4 types dysbiosis listed here. And it's not only about knowing, if you have dysbiosis, but we want to know the type of dysbiosis to properly address it. So number one is when we can have more harmful microbes than good. So that means that you have an overgrowth of certain bacteria that can promote inflammation, cause histamine production, and are associated with autoimmune diseases. We could have low levels of beneficial bacteria, and those bacteria are really helpful for mucosal or gut barrier health, metabolic health, and production of short chain fatty acids, which is really important for controlling inflammation in the body as well as brain health. We could have low bacterial diversity, and that could be related to poor diet and lack of fiber and fiber diversity. We could have an overgrowth of a pathogen, bacteria, fungi, or parasite, so maybe something like SIBO, an H. pylori infection, or a candida overgrowth. So as you can see, all of these would be addressed differently, so it's not about knowing, I think I have dysbiosis, but really what kind of dysbiosis is present. And functional stool testing is my favorite way to dig really deep here. Okay. So what are some causes of dysbiosis? A common one is antibiotics. So excessive recurrent use of antibiotics can allow harmful bacteria to overgrow. PPIs lower stomach acid production, and stomach acid is essential for digestion and protection against things like SIBO, gut infection, and parasites. Poor eating habits and poor digestion that can cause undigested food if we're barely chewing, food to travel to the intestines, and then bacteria can eat them and overgrow, especially when poor gut motility is poor. We can have a poor diet that can contribute to dysbiosis. So diets high in sugar and processed foods and deficient in fiber will allow dysbiotic or bad bacteria to overgrow. Chronic stress impairs the vagus nerve, which is the main nerve of the parasympathetic or that rest and digest nervous system. And we could have a poor gut-brain connection. And it's important to know that the gut and the brain are so closely connected that a disruption in this communication can lead to poor enzyme output, poor gut motility. It can impact inflammation and can cause leaky gut. Symptoms associated with dysbiosis and gut infections could be, the classic GI symptoms of belching, bloating, constipation, and diarrhea. Also things like food intolerances and sensitivities, skin issues, psoriasis, eczema, and acne, mood imbalances, autoimmune disease, and weight loss resistance. Okay, so how do we balance gut bacteria? Well, number one is we want to know what type of dysbiosis is present. So a functional stool test helps to understand your personal gut imbalances. We can then implement targeted and personalized supplement protocols to help balance the microbes and restore your gut health. We can work on specific foods to bolster deficient bacteria in your gut. We want to work on repairing that gut lining, like we talked about earlier, supporting digestion and the production of digestive juices, optimizing that gut-brain connection. So you can do that by actually stimulating the vagus nerve and doing things like deep breathing, humming, singing, splashing cold water on your face, acupuncture or massage if it's available to you are great ways to activate that vagus nerve and optimize that gut-brain connection. And lastly, of course, always personalized nutrition and lifestyle changes depending on what is going on with you. Okay, so that is part 2. And in part 3, we'll talk about the 5 pillars to finally healing your gut. See you there.